Hey Jim, how are you?
Pretty good, Gail. How are you?
Doing great.
I wanted to ask you, do you know the names of those who will be attending from Sheld and HG&E? I was going to put those into the minutes here.
I don't yet. They just said they would have somebody here who could answer our questions.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll see, and I'll hopefully you'll be able to see all their names and their Zoom handles there, but if not, I'll ask everyone to identify themselves.
Okay, that's good. They still haven't uh, finished all the poles on Locks Pond Road yet, the move. That's still in the works, I guess. Not much has changed since I talked to you last about that.
Well, yeah, because the ones that they couldn't do, they're still waiting on Verizon.
Oh, I wonder why.
Yeah, the ones that I had marked there, it was because they said they when they put in the new poles, the drops were at the wrong place, and so without like tearing out the whole drop and redoing it, um, they couldn't move our lines, and
Mhm.
so we put Verizon as next to go, and then um hope hoping that they will do what needs to be done and then assign it back to us. That's kind of the order of operations. They said I should put it in the engine system.
Bobby seems to be one of the ones.
Yep.
Oh,
Hello, Graham.
don't touch anyone else? Yeah, we had a tornado yesterday. Oh, no, Leverett had a funnel-shaped cloud, apparently.
Oh, that's frightening. Yeah, I was actually in Orange yesterday in the place that I was staying. Lost power about 8 p.m. I was planning on working from there, and I just gave up and got back in the car and drove back to Boston because their Comcast was out
Mm.
and I was running on the house generator, so I just left.
Uh,
Yeah.
the times we live in.
Yes.
Mm.
Graham, do you know that do you know if there really was a final cloud in Leverett?
Um, you know, read
Because,
things on the internet. It's like, who
yeah,
knows?
I mean, what I saw, the National Weather Service,
Uh-huh.
first my phone beeped to say that there was a tornado warning.
Yeah.
I go to the National Weather Service and it said the radar had detected a cloud formation that could lead to could cause a tornado to form.
Uh,
I did see then later a funnel cloud was spotted in Hatfield, which is in the wrong direction. Must have been
right. Yeah.
a
Yeah. But
storm. So
the storm system moved right across. So,
yeah,
you could have had stuff in Hatfield as well. Yeah, no, I heard, my wife was reading something off the internet. So, it's like, it's, but yeah, they told us everyone to go to the basement. And so, of course, we went upstairs to do, to do the tornado watch.
yeah.
Yeah. Storm chasers that we are.
Yes.
Hmm.
Are we expecting Craig, Gail? Do you know?
Not sure what his travel and teaching schedule is. We're still 4 minutes
That's too
before
early. Yeah.
start time. So we'll start right at noon, but we'll give him 4
Yeah.
minutes and
Okay.
um yeah.
So on the storm, I don't know whether Bobby can tell us whether we lost any services on the internet, but the broadband. But the top of our street, the dirt part of Wendell Road, a tree fell on the high tension the power line, and it started sparking and caused a fire. And And fortunately, from what I heard, our internet doesn't come through that part of the road, so we wouldn't have lost it there. But I think it didn't. I think it was sparking against its own neutral power line because it was a small hardwood tree. If it had kept on bending down lower, then of course we know that they can spark onto the fiber cable and burn holes in
Support
them.
cable, yeah.
Yeah, the support cable. Yeah. So and the lashing thing as well. So anyhow, I think that it didn't sound like that would have happened, but Bobby would know. I didn't see any repairs either for broadband. Bobby, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we're pretty, but we got no tornadoes, so
Uh,
mighty good.
yeah, for a change, I was looking at that front going by Chicopee North, and it looked pretty tough. But there was about over a dozen ONT dying gasps, all from the Wendell Road area.
Okay. Yeah.
You know,
Okay. So that
and-
was the power going out, the gasps, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
yep, and you hit the nail on the head about the primaries coming down. We did a mid-span out there. Was it last year, Gail, or the year after, where the primary came down over by
Yeah.
the
The
reservoir?
one on Montague Road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you
Great
know,
Burned
that
a hole.
part-
Burned a hole and no one knew about it for a while
Yeah.
until we looked at it ourselves.
Yeah.
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 Binoculars
Yeah.
tell you what's going on when you can't see it from the street, so it works
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
good. You know,
Well, that was on the previous watch, so it wasn't Fiber Spring that had missed that hole in the cable.
Yeah.
Just out of interest. Yeah.
I mean, what I do notice out there when the primary comes down is that there's no cones out.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Just to kind of advise people not to go down the road or whatever. And I've pulled up. I've actually moved. I went down the road to check and make sure the fuses were out of the primary. Came back, threw a line check on it, and moved the conductor off the road. And
Right. Good.
2 years ago. But you know, you
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing that anyways, unless you know what it's about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
So, you know, plus, you know, people looking at you throwing your FR gear on the side of the road think that you're changing to go swimming in Lake Wyola.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, wouldn't it be a bad idea, you know, in the future if like the DPW could put, you know, some road horses out or something to kind of keep people away from those primaries that do come down when the tree.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
I think the highway department would be very happy to hand that to our police department, just because you know the highway department already, no one wants to have that responsibility or that disappointment potential, but the police should be happy to do it, and we seem to have plenty of police in town. And the police chief is now the emergency management person I saw. So yeah, it's a tough one. But thank you, thank you for you pulling the thing off the road, man. On whatever occasion that was. That's pretty gutsy.
Of course, isn't there still a risk if you've got somebody with a generator running and their the interconnect isn't configured properly, that line could still
Yes,
still be live?
they could backfeed the generator through their house connection if they don't have the main circuit breaker tied off and disconnected from the system.
But if it's a secondary power line, then you know it's only going to be 240 volts, and if you if you grab it with something that's a cup, yeah, you can.
Graham, I know you're from Australia, so 240 volts is no big deal to you.
No big deal, right?
But I'd rather not touch it.
Yeah. Not to take away from the 12 o'clock start time, but whenever there's a conductor down, you always have to treat it like it's live.
Yeah.
Sure.
Everybody around it. And regardless, whatever side it is, you just got to stay away from it, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'll just say a little spiel to start off our remote meeting that's required, and then we'll get right into our debrief. So welcome to the July 17th meeting of the MLP and Broadband Committee. I'm Gail Huntress, MLP Manager, facilitating the meeting. This meeting is fully remote. Participating also remotely, we have MLP board members, Jim Hemingway, Graham Sefton, and Steve Schmidt. And also committee member at large, Craig Martin. Joining us as guests today, we have Bobby Liswell and Adam St. Martin from Sheld and Tim Haas from Holyoke Gas and Electric. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for making time today. So we're going to kind of take all of our committee business and push it to the end of the meeting so we can make efficient use of your time. And we will get started and just get right into the debrief about last week's outage. This is one of our very rare system-wide outages, and so we wanted to make sure we have an understanding of what happened and debrief it so that we can learn from it for future outages. So that's the purpose of today's discussion. So again, thank you for being here.
Bill, I'm sorry. I think we have one more person from South Hadley Electric, Kelly Fraser. I asked her to join us today as well. I think she's waiting to be admitted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see her there. Got it.
Of course.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Adam.
Yep.
All right. So also joining us is Kelly Fraser from Sheld.
If possible, before we go around our team on the follow-up, in all best interest, if we could keep this at a high level conversation, it would be really good instead of getting into the granular part of things. And I think Tim's got a real simple way of looking into this, which is something that has never happened before, but physically, equipment wise, I think everybody here would understand what Tim's about to tell you and what took place.
Sounds great. Okay. Welcome, Kelly. Sorry, I didn't see you in the waiting room there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we hand it off to so Tim, then do you want to take it away and just explain what happened during the outage and take it from there.
Sure. So it was pretty much exactly 3 p.m. last Thursday that our 1500 Main Street pop in Springfield went dark. And we knew it immediately. And so we had 3 engineers tasked to figure out exactly what was going on. We were unsure of the exact cause. And so we initially suspected a fiber cut because we've experienced that at that facility, not in any time recently, but in years past. We've experienced trunk cables getting cut out on Main Street. And so that was the first avenue we went down. And so we opened a ticket with Crown Castle. And the other side of that is Crown Castle's been doing a ton of work in the area. And it's on their infrastructure that our ring through Springfield is riding on. So it just gave us another reason to suspect initially why it was fiber cut. So we opened a ticket. And as we're working on response with Crown Castle, we're looking at 1500 Main Street from observed locations in the network at One Fed and at West Holyoke. Basically, those are the 2 connections from our network into 1500 Main. And what we realized was the spans were getting there, and through OTDR on our equipment on the other side, so we could see that the spans were getting inside the building. So at that point, we determined that it must be something to do with power. And it was kind of surprising in the respect that we've done a lot of work with power backup down in that facility. We have 3 different UPS systems, all with multiple battery packs. And we thought we were in a pretty good position. Also, about 3 years ago, the building went through a major power renovation and introduced a second electrical entrance into the building, served from a second substation. So the building has dual entrance on power feeds, and it's served from 2 separate substations. So we were reasonably confident that we weren't going to experience. However, once we figured out that we had a power issue, so while that was going on, And we realized that, and we're trying to figure out what the impact of this is. And we realized that Leverett and Shutesbury were out of service. The ring protect worked. So in other words, when 1500 Main Street went down, the Crown Castle circuits to you went down as well. The L2 traffic rerouted to one Fed, but because your access router at 1500 Main Street was offline, there was no place for the one Fed traffic to go. We realized that pretty quickly, so we went into the one Fed router. So because with these, when you're terminating subscriber circuits, you need, and an IP router, you need to terminate them somewhere. You can't terminate them in two locations. So once we realized 1500 was offline, we went into the one Fed router and turned up the interfaces, and we were able to get Shutesbury internet back up, and a little while after Leverett up again on the secondary connection at 1G. And as soon as we did that, we saw the traffic come in, but the pipe was packed. So during that course, when internet was, restored on the temporary feed, which was like about 20 minutes or so, maybe 30 minutes, the pipe was saturated. And so you weren't going to get a good internet experience. And basically looked to you folks to confirm or not whether that was a true case, because I'm sitting here from an operations perspective and I'm just seeing the traffic coming through. So I'm assuming that the internet was not performing that good over the 1G pipe. Anyone confirm that for me?
That is confirmed, and we had many reports of phone service not working. Was the lack of phone service due to the slow connection, or because the connection to Big River was compromised at the Main Street location?
Yeah, so that was kind of an ordering thing. So we got the internet back up, and then we had an engineer en route to 1500 Main Street to it. When he got there, we had 7 pieces of gear that were offline. And so fortunately, 5 of them we were able to cold start and recover. Basically one UPS was completely blown out. The 2 others had dumped a load. They had taken such a hit that they had dumped the output load, and we know what that does to network equipment. It doesn't like that stuff. So but we were able to get 5 of them cold started and restored. So we figured rather than spending more time trying to get the telephone service, because we had to do the same thing with the phone service as we did the internet service. We decided rather than spending more time on the backup stuff, we can restore 1500 Main Street quick enough. We believed at the time that we can restore all service by just getting 1500 Main Street back in line. So that's what we did. So while that guy, the engineer down at 1500 Main Street was bringing the equipment back up, I had the engineer who was building the backup stuff. I told him, tear that stuff down. And once 1500 comes back, make sure that everything's in tune there. So there was kind of a sequential thing of, okay, we know the pop is going to be coming back. It's bound. We can get everything permanently restored back there. So everything did get permanently restored with the exception of the phone service. And that troubleshooting process began around 4:30, 5 o'clock, and it took us a very long time. What we discovered was the aggregation node was not passing. It was passing all traffic, everything. And there's dozens of services that run on this particular aggregation node. Every single service but the Leverett and Shutesbury phone. And so we're scouring through the configuration. We're staring and comparing. We're like, there's everything looks like it's supposed to be operating properly. So the first thing we did on that guy was do another cold start at about 6:30 p.m. We caused a bump in Internet General overall by doing that, just to see if there was something stuck there, and that wasn't the case. So what ended up happening was we ended up doing a complete flash and restore on that aggregation box, and it did bring it back, and we were able to validate services. And now we're getting into, it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock-ish. And because at the time, it appeared to us that also the telephone router, because your telephone system is set up on dedicated routers. And it appeared that the telephone router to us prior to restoring the transport switch was functioning properly. We could see the connections coming in from Shutesbury, no problem. It was delivering addresses out, everything looked good, but it was not, we could not get the thing to talk northbound. So as the final step, and this is after midnight, we did a flash and restore on the telephone router, and that brought it back online. It was like around 2 a.m. or so before the final restoration of that happened. So that's the long and the short of it.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that explanation. It sounds like that answers the questions about just kind of general overview of what happened, and that the backup connection did trigger, but because of the power outage, it did not. It didn't make the full connection at the Main Street location, and why phone service was the last to be restored, and why it took so long. Let's see.
Can I jump in with a question? Can I jump in with a question?
Yes.
I have a separate UMA phone at home, and it also was out during that time. Does that go through this phone router that you have, or is the phone router dedicated to the phone service that you provide?
Yeah, just the phone service. So was UMA not working all the way to 2 a.m.?
I don't know about that, but around in the evening it wasn't working. I can say that.
Yeah, I don't have if internet was functioning, and I
Yeah.
know you guys were fully restored by that time in
UMA.
the evening, it should have been fine.
Okay. Also,
I don't,
my iPhone's Wi-Fi calling wasn't working either. So.
All right, let's do Graham and then Bobby.
Tim, would the failover have worked okay if your ring if your main ring down in Springfield, if that had stayed up? Is that true?
yes.
Okay, but you wouldn't have had to re-terminate the endpoint or whatever stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. And those routers are each one of those routers are fully redundant. The aggregation router at 1500 Main Street has dual power supplies, dual line cards, dual CPUs. So it's fully redundant in that respect, and provided, had we kept one link to 1500 Main Street, it was real, it was kind of an unfortunate event in the respect that the UPS that got knocked out our main transport node.
Hmm.
So that disabled the ring, and that piece is kind of evolving because we're migrating the transport network at the end of August to our 100G plus infrastructure. So the timing of it was kind of wasn't good at all. But it was definitely power hit everything, and it affected everything at that location.
Okay, well, that's reassuring that our failover would have worked if the unlikely event of losing your ring was key. And the other piece is just a piece of information. When I just happened to be online at 3 o'clock when it went down, and so I turned off. So I checked my cellular service, turned off the Wi-Fi airplane the Wi-Fi, and went to the cellular. And the cellular phone call that I tried to make a few phone calls out of the area, and that didn't work. And I thought, oh my God, what? How big a problem can this be? It doesn't actually.
Well, I'm wondering if a lot of people in Shutesbury were trying to make phone calls.
That might have been possible. So then I tried the cellular texting, and I was able to text people. And so I thought, yeah, you're right, overload on that little cell tower might have been an issue. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Great. Bobby, you had anything to add to that?
Yeah, Craig, quick question. Were you
Yeah.
able to power cycle your equipment at home? Your router?
I did, yes.
You did, and Oma didn't come back up?
I'm pretty sure I tried it after power cycling. I'm not positive the order in which I did it.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure I did.
okay.
Could it be that there just wasn't enough network bandwidth to run a
That
phone
might be.
call if it was before that, like 5 p.m. restoration to get a phone call out?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
The VoIP packets on just straight up internet where there's no quality of service mechanism are gonna get dropped first. They're the
No,
smallest.
this was later in the evening, and I did check the internet was, I was getting half a gig,
Oh,
but
okay.
so no, it wasn't that.
All right.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I don't have an explanation for that.
That's all right. Good enough.
Steve?
Yeah, a couple of questions. We'd had a notification from you a month ago that Crown Castle was going to be doing network maintenance on that previous evening or night around on the 11th after midnight. From your description, it sounds like there's no connection between that and this outage.
No, however, in our troubleshooting, of course, when you're confronted with darkness on a piece of your network, you're trying to determine, the first step is, what's the cause, right? And so because you can't, until you identify that cause, you can't take action. And so because of that, Steve, all the action going on with Crown Castle over the past several months in their infrastructure, that's what led us to believe that it could possibly be a fiber cut. But I don't believe the network maintenance on those circuits had anything to do with the outage.
Another question I've got you. So the power issue there at 1500 Main, was this specific to your facility there?
Took the whole building out.
Pardon?
Took the whole building out.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah, there was a major cable fault on the electrical system through Eversource downtown Springfield that night, which was the result of the problems. That power surge ripped through the 1500 Main Street building and ended up knocking out the equipment that Tim had mentioned there. And then downtown Springfield continued to remain out of power, I think, until the following day, as Eversource was still working to resolve the cable issues. It's day 6 or 7 of extreme heat and overload. That system was getting very taxed, and by the end of that, 5th, 6th straight 90-degree plus day, downtown Springfield was feeling the effects of that. So
okay, so even though the building has that secondary feed, the damage has been, am I correct in understanding the damage was done by the initial failure?
by the initial, right, the original surge in voltage that resulted from the cable fault hit the equipment, tripped the circuit, the backup kicked back in, but at that point, all the damage had been done, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah, so the power outage, we could easily, and we've survived power outages there for hours and hours and hours. We have, 7+ hours of runtime on all of our UPSs there. We refresh the batteries constantly. We don't have a generator on site there, but we have 3 roll-up generators that are on queue and tested every 6 months. So we have all of these. We just and we buy the best UPSs. So the UPS that got blown up, we got to replace that guy, and that's a $20,000 bill. Okay, so we got to do that. But we buy these things with the expectation that they're going to hold, and sometimes it's just too strong. And this isn't the first time we've seen this at 1500 Main Street, but we've seen it in Holyoke in years past. We've seen it in Chicopee years past. These events can be intense, and it kind of just rocks everything that's connected to it.
Yeah, sounds like a perfect storm there of just power surge that took everything out there. All right. So going forward, is there any other way to prevent this, or do you think all of the things in place to the UPSs and surge protectors and obviously generators on site anything else we can do differently there to prevent this? Or is it just like, oh, do you really think this is just a one-off, really unusual thing that is unlikely to happen again?
It is unusual for sure. If I can't say for certain if it's not gonna happen again, only because it was just so unpredictable. So, I can't give a great answer on that. I can say, we'll have a new fresh UPS down there. So we're looking at all of this again, and we're gonna go through all of it again. But unfortunately, I think we did what we were supposed to do. And so I don't think I'm gonna go forward doing anything different.
Okay. Yeah, the things that worked really well with this outage was the notification. Shell did a wonderful job of letting me know right away. That allowed me to get something up on the website. I know that Nintegrity was notified within a half an hour, so that any incoming customers, and I was watching them come in, and were notified that we knew about it and that it was being worked on. So that whole system worked great, I think. The one thing that didn't work well was the emergency notification text message to go out to our police and fire and our some people on this call, notifying of the outage. So we don't have to solve this right now. In fact, I think I'll save this and debrief with Bobby and team later on that of how can we make sure that happens. Because in Shutesbury, we have this unique problem with the not complete, but most lack of cell service, that when the phones go out, it's a public safety issue because people have no way to contact. So that's the one thing I want to improve in terms of communication, is make sure that text message is going out to fire and police. And then internally, the other thing is, I had luckily landed in Milwaukee an hour before, and I'd gotten to my hotel in Madison. And so I was online during this and could kind of manage the communications on our end. But if I'm not here, or I'm on a plane, or I'm somewhere else, or occupied with my other job, that's a problem on our end that we need to solve. Of what if I'm not available? What's our emergency protocol notification? So those two things, the text messages to us in the case of an outage, and then on our end, what happens if I'm not here to manage it, are the things we need to kind of improve on this process. Anything else that that was learned from this that we should do differently in the future from anyone on the team? Okay. Oh, Steve?
I did have an additional question I was going to ask, but
Okay. All right, well, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to ask a little more about the phone system. When we switched over providers to Shelled, and you explained how your network worked, and that you had your phone service provider was Big River, I believe, out in St. Louis, and immediately, a little flag goes up. Wait a minute, that's a long ways away. Got connections out to halfway across the country. There was concern there because telephone service, old-fashioned landline service, is still so critical out here due to the poor cell service we have here. You explained how you had thought this through, that you had 2 separate dedicated lines out to Big River. Sounded like, this was really well thought through. What I want to know is, in the phone outage that we had, it's sounding to me like there wasn't a problem with you connecting to Big River. It was the connection within your network. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's absolutely true. Yes. And so where your connection came in, there was no place for it to go because that guy was not alive. And so, like I said, and maybe that's something we can talk about as far as, we're able to restore internet reasonably quickly. it would have taken a lot longer to restore internet if we had worked to try to restore the phone first, because it took us so long, we didn't realize what was going on there. And so it was kind of like, again, when we brought 1500 Main back online, we figured we'd restore all services. We didn't realize that there was going to be trouble with the phone. But you're absolutely correct. The connection from Big River stayed up through One Federal the whole time.
Okay.
So when we're bringing 1500 back up, we made the decision not to keep going forward with the temporary reconfig, because we probably would have had your phone back up in 15-20 minutes on the One Fed router had we not said, hey, we can get everything restored if we bring it back to 1500 Main Street, not knowing at that time that we were going to have trouble restoring a couple of devices at 1500 Main Street. Is that clear?
Okay,
It,
yeah,
it does, and I agree. I think you made the right call there of no, we can get everything. Don't waste your time over here when you can get everything up over there. But you had no idea to know that other things were out. Yeah.
More
Great.
and
Well,
more
I mean,
people are,
that,
more and more people are doing Wi-Fi calling, so therefore you're restoring telephone when you restore the internet.
Yeah,
Graham,
just-
but
yeah.
Wi-Fi calling didn't work for me.
Right, but once
If
the
I'd-
internet was once the
If I'd have been
internet's restored,
if I'd have been having a heart attack, some of us might be looking at a lawsuit or something, right? I mean, that's a concern.
yeah, but if your internet gets restored quickly, to shoot for restoring internet is probably, I would think, the best thing. But and then more and more so as time goes by. The other thing does
I guess that's a question I'd like to ask is, so if confronted with the same situation again, should we act the same?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would maybe change in the process and tell me if this is like just not possible with personnel and equipment in two different locations. But once you figured out that, oh, it's not just a 15-minute fix at Main Street, and there really is another something else going on with the phone, going back to the original and saying, okay, let's get One Federal up and prioritize that phone service. Would have that been possible?
Not with the primary, so when we brought 1500 Main Street back up, we brought the 10G, the 10G link to Shutesbury back up. So everything was flowing back over there. So in order for us to get you up to One Fed telephone router, it has to come through 1500 Main and go up to One Fed. But that service was broken. We actually tried doing that before we restored the transport node. We tried bypassing it and sending your telephone traffic from 1500 Main up to the One Fed router, and we couldn't get it to connect. It was the same thing. That
I see.
service was down and it was not passing.
So the choices really were either you work on the backup connection and everything's really slow and you get it back up, or you can have 10 gigs down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full internet, and we can suffer through and try to figure out what the heck is going on with this telephone service.
Yeah.
would a backup phone router be useful, or would that be adequate? Is that possible?
So there's two in place now. There's a live backup in place now. We
Okay.
couldn't, with our service down, we couldn't get the connectivity into it. It's on a different location.
Okay.
So you can see how the compounding issues were presented to us and how we had to dissect each issue to get to the full resolution and why it took so long. We didn't know we couldn't see, and we can never see what was going on in the boxes after these power hits,
No. Bobby?
Everybody has to think of it like this. If that equipment at 1500 was up in Shutesbury, it would still be approached the same way to do process of elimination to get services back online.
That you still would have followed the same order of operations of diagnosis regardless.
Yep.
Yeah.
A power surge, nobody can predict the physics of how it's going to affect electronic equipment, or it's going to travel through metal or anything. And at the end of the day, the response that was given from Hoyle Gas and Electric and the Shell team was superb, from down at 85 Main Street with Adam, customer service, Lee, myself, whatever, Gail, you, whatever we needed to do, we were very proactive on it. Again, this is a catastrophic hit. This is not a common predicament.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And this isn't the purpose of the debrief is not to like assign blame or say, you know,
Right.
do better. It's really
It's gonna
what
come-
happened and can we learn from anything? So I
Yeah,
think this has been
exactly.
really informative.
Yeah, but
You know.
balancing the scales is like, you know, to take a really local look at it, if that equipment was up in Shutesbury, the same approach would be in play for sure.
Tim, the power surge, do you monitor like how big a surge that is? Does it show a recording? Can one make a claim against the power utility later? What's the status on something like that?
I suppose I could look at them. But our intent wasn't to go after, I don't know who to assign fault to, whether it's the building or the power company. I mean, who's really liable here? You know what I mean?
Are you able to see the magnitude of the surge? Is there testing? Is there monitoring equipment that logs a history of surges?
Yeah. Well, I mean, UPS keeps some sort of log. I can check, but no, we don't have any monitoring equipment sitting on the line that tells
Oh, yeah.
us. Well, I don't think we have that really anywhere on any of our equipment.
No.
Bobby?
Graham, I can tell you, you know, backing up Adam's Eversource notification with the Main Street having a power outage down in Springfield, it went all the way up through Forest Park to the X. This wasn't very small. This was a large electrical outage.
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, well, we are at time, so I want to make sure to release the other teams here because I know everyone's really busy, and we have the rest of our meeting to go through. And for action items, I'm going to connect with the Shell team about notification protocol. And today, if we have time, we'll talk internally about what's our backup plan if I'm not available for cases like this. And any other final comments on this before we stop, Steve?
Yeah, I would just say, and this may be clear to Shell Nation now, but going forward, if another odd event happens like this, to just keep in mind that in Shutesbury, the landline phone service is a priority and probably a higher priority than it would be in a more urban area. We're not trying to micromanage you and say, oh, well, or look back and say you should have, would have, you know, that's not it. But just to keep in mind that it may be a higher priority. It is a higher priority here than in other places. I'll just leave it at that.
All right,
Understood.
thanks, Steve, for that reminder.
So Gail, we'll reach out and coordinate time to get together and talk a little bit more about the notification.
Yeah, that can be something we can do over the next month. And again, thank you everyone for your quick responses and work on this. This was a major event and it could have been so much worse. And you know, I think our customers were really pleased with the fast response and being you know, notified, and that within hours most services were restored, and everyone really appreciates that.
Yeah. I give you hands.
Bravo.
Total bravo on that. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, all right. So we'll let the rest of you sign off, and I'll be in touch to schedule follow-up.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Did everyone get what we wanted from that?
Yeah, and my Wi-Fi calling, Craig, my Wi-Fi calling was working by 4:45 because
Oh, really?
Jim phoned me. So So yeah, I know that I could, yeah. So so as soon as they got back to the 10G, I think you're unlucky or some bump there somehow or other.
Yeah, but I mean, I think Steve and I are both of the opinion that this needs to be considered more carefully. I mean, if restoring it requires resetting routers and all that, your average person is not going to be thinking about that. And again, if it turns out that the really freaky happens and something like this happens and somebody has a medical emergency, excuses are not going to be yeah, it's going to be a concern.
Medical emergency could go on internet services being down too, though, surely, because some of
except
us
for the fact that we've told people you can get 911 service on the landline that you get from us. So it's really more the loss of other modes of communication is only secondary. It's the landline that we really have to have prioritized, as Steve suggests.
Steve, does your wife's does your wife's cell phone work yet in your location, Steve?
Yes, because I initially tried to call the Sheld number with her cell phone, and it came up call failed, which was curious to me. Made me wonder, again.
Yeah, no, I was getting the same kind of thing. Yep.
What's down? But then I called Gail and got her in Madison, Wisconsin, and that's what started. In fact, that was what started the notification. So
yeah, as I said, I was getting call failed on all my calls out on my cellular, and I think Tim Haas's suggestion is that, well, anybody who lost the internet was suddenly using their it was failing over to cellular, and maybe that little tower up the hill didn't have the traffic capability. So yeah, I was getting the same thing on call failed.
Yeah, and I mean, did I understand it right that even if they had kept working at One Federal, trying to get the phone service up on the super slow connection, that it still would have failed because of how the phone gets routed through the one main street, which was completely blown out? Did I understand that correctly? The kind of like, in this case, there was no other choice that they could have made that would have gotten phone service up faster. Or is that unclear?
No, it sounded like they could have gotten it up faster, but it would have slowed down the internet restore. Or is that what you just said?
No, that they, well, yes. What am I saying? They had to make the choice either at One Federal, we run the slow 1 gig backup and get phone, or we do it all down at Main Street. And they said, we're going to go after, because we know we can get the internet up, the fast internet. And what we're saying here is that in the future, if there's a choice, go after the slow connection and phone service. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. So I didn't want to get too argumentative with them, but can they set up another route to the second phone router so that it doesn't have to go through right now? It sounds like the phone traffic has to go through one spot, even though there's 2 potential routers. And maybe that's a weak point that they need to fix.
Yeah, I will ask. Let's ask about that. If there's a second phone router for One Federal that could completely replace the one at One Main Street if needed, if that whole place just gets blown out, can there be a second router?
Can they make it more resilient in some manner? Yeah, or in many manners. Yeah.
Because they said they had 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have 2 phone routers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At different locations.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed it. Are the 2 phone routers in the same location? Are they?
No, different locations.
Different locations. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well,
But
that
they,
would be. Oh,
but to get to them goes through one place.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah.
Well,
So
they've got their ring that connects 1500 Main to 1 Federal. In fact, that was the thing that delayed our going online with them initially, was that connection within Springfield.
their ring went down. They
Yeah.
said it all went dark. So,
Yeah.
so that was an unlikely event, because the whole thing of the ring is, is redundant and robust and resilient. So, and that was why Tim was a little nonplussed and embarrassed that yeah. So shouldn't happen. Rarely happens.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, there was a outage with our previous provider that was also a power issue at 1500 Main Street. But as we questioned them, got a debriefing on it, it sounded like it was not a building outage, but it was an outage specific to their facility. And it wasn't really explained. I mean, was it a bad circuit breaker to that room, or was it a power supply to their equipment? They never really explained that. That's why I asked about this outage, and they explained, no, it was the whole building. And then it's like, we finally learned, well, it's Eversource.
It sounds like it was all of that area of Springfield,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
Like it was, like this wide area.
And of course, the
problem.
trouble today is it wasn't just that power went down, which then you could back up with generators, but going down with a surge
Yeah.
that damaged all this equipment. And that seems to be what triggered the waterfall, or whatever you call it here.
Right.
Yeah, because he said they have 7 hours UPS on most of their stuff, right? So yeah,
And they
it
bring a
didn't get to exercise that.
I mean, it does bring up the question of surge protection then. Is the surge protection they've got at that facility adequate?
Well,
As we know, on a small scale with some of our
Right.
equipment.
Well, I can ask about that. The surge, wondering about that surge protection. Like, is it in place, or did it work as kind of the only way you can design it, which is the UPS takes the hit and goes out and protects the downstream equipment? Or is there something else that could be put in place? Because it wasn't even the power outage that was the problem here, really.
No.
Right? It wasn't that. The surge was the problem.
Yeah. I don't think they have a way to evaluate or measure that surge. In other words, a technical way, which I don't know whether anyone has that capacity or not.
Mine does, but the service
I know.
on the
But the surge, it would vary all over Springfield in terms of in terms of the outage. It would be a very difficult problem to try to evaluate exactly what kind of a surge it was, and how big of a one, and how long the surge lasted. I mean, it's a tough one, and I don't think that they have any way to monitor that. And maybe others do, or maybe Eversource does, but Eversource seems to be good at creating situations like this, unfortunately.
Source won't tell you what the problem is.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll follow up with them. And the thing that I was alluding to in the outage process that didn't happen, that was a miss, was that when any kind of widespread outage like this happens, they're supposed to send out a text message, and I have like a preformed message is like approximately ... one of our mail lines, or whatever the description is. This means several Shutesbury residents or all Shutesbury residents are without internet and phone communications in the following area, and then it should say all of Shutesbury. And then that goes to Chief Leonard, his second, our police chief's text message, Graham, and Becky. So What's
And-
that? Oh, and me, yeah. Yeah, so it's just supposed to be like this automated, not automated, but like as soon as they know, like this is supposed to go out to let everybody know. So that was a miss. So that's one of the things I'm gonna follow up with them about, is making sure that we get this followed. The thing that we need to discuss is what happens if I'm not available. Like I just started notifying you guys and Becky. Since I didn't know that the phone service was out until much later, I never did get a message out to the police or fire saying that was down. And so I that was a miss on my part. I should have gotten that out and I didn't. And I posted a message on our website and then every 20 minutes or so just kept updating it. But you know, if I'm not
They were good. That was wonderful to see that.
Thank you. Yeah, but what if I'm not here, you know, or unavailable? Yeah,
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah. What I'm thinking is you know, my service came back. I didn't know that the phone was still out until I got an email from you saying, would somebody check and see? You said you've had reports that the phone is still out. I said, oh, well, let me go check. And then I pick it up and I'm getting the rapid busy signal. And I look and I say, oh, the ONT's got the red light on it for the phone, which interestingly did not happen initially. With the initial outage, I was getting a regular dial tone, but couldn't make a call, and the ONT was green. So who knows that? But it seems when they got internet service, when Shell HE got internet service restored, but we're having difficulty getting the phone service restored, they should have notified you, sent out that emergency text message, should have gone out saying phone service is still down. And particularly since that notification goes to police and fire and emergency management. So I think that's where that's another area of improvement on their end that could be done.
Yeah, if they missed the initial send out, or you know, they're just frantically trying to do stuff and didn't get that out, you know, an hour later when they had internet up and they're like, ooh, we're still having trouble with phone. That was another opportunity for them to send that out. So
I did look up because I've occasionally thought about, it's an unusual event to lose the connection and the backup to the town. So it's sufficiently unusual that it doesn't seem like worth using a lot of energy to solve the potential problem. But there are communications apps, I looked them up, that you can just run in a local Ethernet sort of subnet, and it is possible that you know, it might take maybe Calix would have to do something, or someone would have to do something, but when we all have Ethernet and we all can talk to the hut, there are things that that already there are apps that exist that possibly free apps, I don't know, or I can't remember, but anyhow, so that we could talk within the town, but it's sufficiently rare that it's kind of almost not worthwhile, you know.
Because we should have been able to talk to the hut all through this.
Yeah.
Well, you
because
could
our
if
network was working.
Yeah.
Oh,
If
we
you had
did,
the right
yeah.
app, if you had an app that ran, you know, just
I'm
with
saying
the hut,
potentially we could, the town network
Yes.
was not.
exactly. It would be a process that ran at the hut, possibly, and if the hut was alive and not blown up, then and you had a link to the hut, you know. You know, with the storms ahead or the weird things that go ahead, it might still be worthwhile. But that was certainly down the weeds, and I wasn't about to ask that question to those folk, but we could look into that.
Mhm.
yeah.
Maybe
Do you
something
think
we
do you
could
think
get
it's
some
worth
of
it
this,
to
get
yeah,
some
do you,
grant money for.
oh yeah. If it costs anything. Is it worth it for us to have a second to me who can do things like post on the website? Or do you think this is rare enough that it's just like, you know, not worth pursuing a big process for it?
I want to call it rare at the moment, and it is, so far it is rare, so.
Okay. Yeah, you know, Becky's another one who can shoot out a blast email to the town, which is what, you know, I did within that first hour or so, if that's needed. And you know, I think maybe probably well, I know our town clerk can do it too. You know, Grace can do it. She has the power and the knowledge to send those blast emails. So okay. We won't go too deep on that. And you know, it's not extremely often when I'm completely out of touch. But like next week, for example, I'm taking my annual trip to the White Mountains and I will be completely gone all week. Just no, no communications whatsoever. So
But
anyway,
there's towers on top of Mount Washington that actually get a good range.
That's right.
there is, if I am up on Adams or Washington, you're right, I will be available. But if I'm in the valleys, not so much.
Okay, you've got to plan your route so you're not down in
That's, oh yeah, that's right.
Walk
Yeah,
the
the
ridge
special,
line the whole way so I can stay in touch. Sounds like a
special
plan.
route. That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. So, but anyway, speaking of which, Sheld already knows I'm out next week with no communications. Graham, you're their second to call in case anything happens. But statistically, we've already had our big thing. It's fine. Nothing's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Be careful.
Yeah.
Don't want to be superstitious.
No. No. All right. Well, let's move on. If you think of anything else, let me know. I'll make those follow-up questions with Tim and well, Bobby too, and see if we can get that text message notification as something that they make happen next time that there's a major outage. Okay. So first order of business is to approve the previous meeting minutes as amended from June 19th. Do I have a motion? Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Schmidt, aye.
Hemingway,
Seft and I.
Thank you, and thank you for saying your name, so we're following protocol here. All right, Graham, hut report.
Yeah, I as you might recall, the excitement of a slamming door, possible jamming, as we talked about last month, and it was just a thing. And I did get it reviewed by, I might have copied you, or I certainly told Gail. I got a builder, a retired builder, Russ Wilson, lives right next door, very competent guy, to look at the door and just say, you know, is there something weird about the hinges or anything like that? And he agreed with me and agreed with what Lee Masters had sort of thought, was that the little compression pads that had once stopped the door closing so tightly into the jam were sufficiently damaged that it was time to replace them. So right now I found the right depth thing. They possibly were always too slim to prevent the door jamming, because as we might recall, the door had done something wrong, you know, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago in the wintertime. We thought it was freezing, but it might not have been freezing. It might have just been
just
jammed.
last winter.
Hmm?
Wasn't it just last winter, Graham? Wasn't it just last winter?
Yeah, last winter. You're right. Yeah. So anyhow, I now set the thickness of the pads that are on the door jamb, so that I cannot slam it hard enough, and the pads aren't so thick as to ever stop the door closing, locking. So you know, it's one of these things of, you know, it was empirically.
You Goldilocks it. You got it just right.
Yeah, exactly. It was a Goldilocks design. Yeah. So, I sweep the floor in there once a month, and the floor will look good. I turned the, no critters or any invasive signs, and I turned the as you might recall from Gail, setting the lead and the lag on the HVAC, so that if the suspect system, which is leading, fails, then we will be able to tell, because it'll fail over to the lagging system, which has never been a problem and is always as new. But I did, because of the hot weather, Gale, and the temperature in the hut, I set it down to 68 from 70, so it's still right around the same thing. It extends. Yeah, the argument for running huts a little warmer to save electricity on HVAC and carbon footprint issues is neutralized by the longevity thing, that if the air is a little cooler, the active equipment lasts a little bit longer and is a little more reliable. So it's good to, it's good to not let that get too high for too long. And man, we are having hot weather these days, aren't we? And we're in the easy place compared to the places that are really getting hot weather. So anyhow, nothing else on the hut.
Great,
Right.
yeah, and HVAC number 2 is had no problems. I just want to mention that since our last test, so that it seems like that louver fix did it, which is great.
It's looking good. Yeah.
Yep.
So just to understand, it sounds like there's been a change on the protocol on the HVACs from just having one on and one off. Now they're both on, but at separate levels, separate thermostat levels, to get the lead and the lag, and you reverse that instead of just completely on and off. Is that?
I probably want to reverse it, because I think that, at least for a while, because I think that our newer system is the backup. The reversing the lead lag is great for optimizing if everything else is equal, and wearing out things equivalently. But I think with what I think as a compromised system, I think that it will fail first. Rather see it fail sooner rather than later. I don't know. So.
Okay, but still, it is a change in the protocol from having one on and one off, is it?
In the wintertime, I think we probably just go back to running one, because but I can look now and see what the power difference is. Maybe running both is in the wintertime, it's not a problem, because the cooling air outside is plenty cool enough, and yeah, so we've got the backup of the outside air in all the times when the air temperatures doesn't go above 70 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like this new system of one running as main cooler and then a cooler backup for the summer months makes sense, because if it's 90 degrees outside, the backup of opening that vent to say, okay, let in the outside air, nope, it means there's no backup. So I think this is a better thing for the warmer months, running one of them as main, running one of them as cooling backup, instead of one completely off. Why, this is why we have 2, is so that one of them can kick on automatically without one of us having to make an emergency trip to the hut.
Yeah, and I always did that in the summer.
Yeah, great.
Okay, and I completely agree with lowering that temperature to 68. I mean, the reliability of the system has got to take precedence here over
Saving some bucks on electricity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Graham, thank you for the low-tech solution you came up to with the door.
Yay.
System. After all the high-tech issues we deal with, finding the right thickness of rubber bumpers for the door is it's kind of refreshing to hear that.
Like Gail said, Goldilocks.
Yep. Oh, one more hot thing. I am still working on the key problem. I'll keep you posted. Becky said she was going to call. She just didn't follow up, so I just took it back and called the locksmith myself. But they have not called back yet, so I'll keep working on it. All right, so our service report, we had 39 tickets in June. It's an uptick from the slow month of May with about 25, but 4 of those were dead air. There's a robocall, some wrong numbers coming into the tech support. So really it was only about 35 calls. And there's a handful of those that are doubles too, people like calling back to check on. So I'm not worried about the slight uptick. And as long as we stay under like 45 tickets, that's very average for us per month. Oh,
Yeah,
here's-
one of those triple calls, the same customer calling 3 times, and one of the things was cancel the service. I just wondered whether whether if you want to look at that, whether 35 Weatherwood Drive, I don't remember, but anyhow, I'll send you the screenshot. Whether I don't know, but it would be a customer that you could contact and just perhaps and just ask, what was the issue? Did you cancel the service because of any particular thing? I don't know.
Sure. I'm glad to follow up on anything. We get cancels a lot with tenants moving out. And so if they were canceling for May or June, my guess is it was the end of a lease. That happens more frequently than you would think, of people just cycling in and out of rentals, canceling their service, and then it re-ups the next month.
Yeah, could have been a rental. The name, yeah.
So here's a fun one. We had our first dig safe error, and a line was cut down over in the January Hills area. So it was done by an excavating company. I won't say their name on this public meeting. The system worked as it should have. And at first I was freaking out. I'm like, oh no, I missed one, and I didn't get it and do the appropriate dig safe. But what happened was that the excavating company called in the dig safe. It was entered faithfully, and the dig safe ticket went to Amherst, not us. Because it's January Hills.
Yeah.
Oh, too.
Yeah. So I called DigSafe to get a better understanding of, like, don't you guys have things in check to, checks in place to prevent this exact kind of thing? And the answer is that they do. The question that comes up, and I'll read it exactly, is the user is asked when they're entering, does the exact location of the DigSafe site that you provided fall within the blue shaded area on the map? And the user is shown a map, and they're supposed to look and say, oh yes, the address is there. But my guess is that the excavating company, whoever was entering it, just didn't check carefully. And so it went through. We were never notified, and the lines got damaged. In a fortuitous event, Sheld was already there on another ticket, not in Shutesbury, on another ticket. They noticed that the ONT went missing. They're just like, no, I'll just do a drive-by. They immediately assessed what was happening. They immediately hung an aerial line and got the customer back online the same day. So that they did a wonderful response there. But now, unfortunately, it's up to the customer to wrestle with the excavating company to get this fixed, because it's on them, and it's an expensive one, right? It's underground damage. So the whole thing has to be remade. So,
but couldn't DigSafe be held responsible, liable here because they failed to follow their proper? Oh, they didn't.
No, it was
okay.
user error. It was user error. The person entering was like, oh yeah, January Hills and Amherst. Yep. Check. They did not look on the map and say, oh, whoops, this address isn't in the shaded area that they're asking me to check. Okay. So it clearly was the enterer's user error. I asked DigSafe, is there anything else you can do here to make a big pop-up or something for the user? And they said, we've done everything we can in our system with these map checks to make sure that it's in the right area. It really was a user mistake here. So,
and that's the contractor. The contractor is putting in the dig safe, so then they take the hit.
Yeah. So let's see, so that's the dig safe. So again, it's not gonna cost us anything. It's on the user to figure out how they're gonna pay for this. And I assume they're gonna charge the excavator. But Shell knows that it should just be paid directly by the customer in some way. Let's see, I put this on our agenda item before the meeting a couple of days ago because we have an unexpected expense that's coming up related to the library costs. We have about $4,000 in auditing costs now, and then another 4,000 in January, and then another 4,000 next fall in unexpected auditing costs. So this is above and beyond the normal audits that we have done every 3 years because it's a special audit required by the state in order to make sure town finances are all in order for Shutesbury to receive the grant for the library build. So when the state gives a grant that's this large, they want to, of course, make sure that the receiving town's finances are in order. So they do 3 full years of audits for that town. Because we run an enterprise fund, there's special rules on how these audits have to happen. Ours has to happen actually separately from the town. And so it's the town is paying about, what is it, 14,000 per year for just their portion, and ours is $4,000. So fiscal year 23, 24, and 25 are all being done by the auditing company. And you may wonder why it's so expensive. The answer I was given is that this is just what it costs. It's an estimate given by the private auditing firm. This is Tom Scanlon's, and you know, he's the one who does all our audits.
Yeah, they've done it down for years.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it's all said and done, it may be more, a little more, and maybe a little less, but this is the estimate that it was given. Let's see, just to clarify again, this is separate than the audit that is done by the DOR to certify retained earnings. You know, this is a completely separate process than that. And let's see, anything else that's relevant here. Oh, our normal auditing schedule should resume after 2025. So when this is over, the next audit will happen in 2028 under the town's and discretion about what else is going on with our finances. But we usually only do this every 3 years. So it's not going to break our budget, but it is an unexpected expense. And
It's puzzling to me because when we were considering, when we were presented by the DOR, we have to go with enterprise fund accounting system. And so Leverett was using the chapter 164 MLP accounting, and the DOR says, yeah, but you can't do that if you're an internet only MLP, and there was this back and forth. And we considered, well, should we still try and go with the chapter 164 accounting system? But one of the downsides of that was that required a separate audit every year, which was an expensive undertaking, which the enterprise fund did not. So because we have an amount in our budget, I think it's $800 a year for auditing, which is just our percentage is to cover the time when the town has a general audit done, we would kick in our percent of that. But you say we're informed that we need a separate audit just of the enterprise fund because of the town's, is it the granting or the borrowing for the library? Do you know?
I don't know, but it's something that's required by the state. It sounded like, what did you, it was for the reception of the grant. that this is a requirement to make sure that the money isn't going to a failing town. So, yeah, this is something that is just being put as part of our budget. On the upside, or I don't know, we're not getting charged for the normal audit, right? So we have like 800, what is it? 800, no, that's right, not right.
It was 800.
Yeah, we say
Yeah,
the difference.
something's like
Or we-
850 a year for the audit that has not been used because this, you know, it's going towards this kind of like Uber audit instead of the normal 3-year. So,
Yeah, it's a good suggestion, Steve. Suggestion. Go ask them just in case you can push them to just make it part of the town as the normal audit is, because that framework is probably already in place. And I don't know. It's worth asking. Is there someone you can ask?
help me understand what the question is. Like, can
The
we
question would be
take away from an enterprise fund?
at the moment, our audit is just within the framework of the whole town getting audited. Do I understand that correctly, Steve?
Well-
No, our audit is done separately from the
Yeah.
town as an enterprise fund.
Okay, I missed that now.
But I thought the money we have in our budget for the audit was just a portion of the town's audit.
That is correct. That's how that is how we calculated out the auditing expense. Whether that audit is done as part of it or is charged separately, and the process by which the audit is done is like they look at the books separately or together, I don't know.
I mean, it seems to me the auditor is going to bill the town. Just auditing services that, you know, this audit needs to be done for this library grant. And, you know, it would not seem unreasonable for me to just ask the town to accept this as part of the cost of the library.
Where is that?
Because we don't have anything in our line item other than that $800 to cover this. So actually, we'd need a special town meeting held to appropriate this.
It's like a building cost. It's a project cost, Steve, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think this just ought to go into the project cost of the library.
Okay.
I like that logic.
I agree.
Jim?
I agree as well.
Okay, I will, my pen just ran out.
Should check if it's a reimbursable expense on the on the library grant as well. It might be.
Yeah. All right, I will keep you posted on it on that. And just say, no, we're not going to pay this because it should be part of the library expenses. It's a capital expense related to town finance. We're happy to pay the 850 in our budget for it that we've already allocated for auditing expenses. Let's see. I'm going to move into manager report next. We're getting close to time here, so I'll just say that we got an amazing number of responses from the digital equity survey. We got over 350 responses, which is nearly half of our subscriber base, which is fantastic for any kind of survey like this. Usually you expect like maybe 10%. So the fact that we got so many is really great. And on the 29th, we're going to have a listening session at the Leverett Town Hall for anybody who wants to attend and give additional feedback. There'll also be kind of like a preliminary presentation by FERCog of our results. I've gotten at least one report kind of going over the results. The thing that's relevant to us, the most relevant in the short term is how we're going to use the state grant for this. And so we let's see, what can I touch that's the most important? Well, 95% of the respondents said they have access to the devices they need. Another interesting point that I thought really stood out was 74% of households said they have no children in their household, which kind of highlights as something we kind of already knew of the kind of the aging of our population here.
And or the ones with kids didn't have time to respond.
Or that's true too.
Good point.
They have no time. And what else? When asked directly of how we should use these funds, we had that question there, just like, how do you think we should use these funds? The majority of people said that it should be used to connect the unconnected, subsidizing anyone who's not yet connected. And the second most common thing that they said was, we want new routers. But when asked, well, how much do you want to pay for new routers? They said, oh, I don't want it if I have to pay for it, actually. So we'll do it. So again, we'll do a deep dive probably at our next meeting into the results and what they mean and how to interpret them, and make some of those decisions.
Yeah, the meeting on the 29th, this is an in-person live in IRL meeting.
It is an IRL meeting, or on Zoom. In fact, I can't attend in person, so I myself am going to be on Zoom. But it was the only time that we could have it with everybody's vacation and travel. So FERCog decided to go ahead with it, even though I couldn't be there.
Want to send out a notification of that when it gets closer? Sure.
Yep, I will. Yeah, by tomorrow I'm going to send it out to everybody using blast email and stuff, saying, hey, if anyone wants to come to this to see the results and provide your feedback, it's available.
And this is when?
Monday, July 29th. And I believe it is it's either 5 or 7. I'll send clarification. It's that evening, so I think it's probably 7. All right, the last thing I have on the agenda for today is to go over our wrap up for our budget. Unfortunately, Gail Weiss still does not have the posted revenue, so some of those things are just kind of like, well, I think this is our revenue, but it hasn't posted yet. But unless the checks were lost or something, that is going to be our bottom line. And Steve, I know you sent some questions about the backhaul. I haven't had time to dig into that yet, but I will. Any other questions or concerns about our financial wrap up for fiscal year 24?
The only thing I'd say, Gail, is I had a number of things I went through your report that I had questions about. And I was wondering if it might be better to put this off, this discussion off a month till you and I could go over some of these things. I was having trouble following certain things you had done, and I thought if we discussed that, maybe you could get it into a format that would be a little easier to read. And if we combine that with getting a final figure from Gail Weiss, then we'd definitely know where we are.
Sure. Yeah. Glad to do that. And Steve, you and I can meet separately. Does anybody else have any other questions that they'd like answered about the financial report besides Steve's questions?
Gail, my incompetence on getting the receipt for the $3.90. Did you go into the hut and find the receipt? Was
I
that
did. I did get your $3 and whatever receipt, and I
Good
submitted it for
job.
you.
I'll buy a coffee on the strength of
Good,
that. Yeah,
good.
thank you.
Sure thing.
I guess the only other thing I'd raise right now is that, my reading of the report is we got the money, the 40,000 change from WGE for the CAF2, the big one that came in time. It looks like we did not get the money from New Salem yet for the connection there.
That is correct. I asked for it and they said, we can't get it together in time for this fiscal year deposit. It's just, it has to be next year. So yeah.
It wasn't a big deal, and that's fine.
No, that 44 was the bigger one. So that's good. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll wrap it up. Steve, I'll make a time to connect with you. Anything else?
Yeah, I did have something I'd been thinking about. When we were with Crocker, we had a significant inventory of equipment, and we built that up more, and they were storing it at their location. We switched over to Sheld. We moved that equipment down to Sheld's warehouse in South Hadley. We actually saw it when we were down there. And then some point later, you reported to us that Sheld had said, it doesn't make sense for you to carry this separate inventory. We'll just use our, we have an inventory of equipment that would be needed. And so that seemed going forward, okay, we wouldn't continue to restock our inventory. We would just, Shell would work it down. But I'm just thinking, well, there was still that significant inventory. And is that being monitored? Are we keeping an eye on that inventory? Are we inventorying our inventory of equipment?
Yes, Bobby was maintaining a spreadsheet of our inventory, and the idea was that we would use it up as much as possible, and then go to using Sheld's equipment after that. In other words, just stop restocking our stuff. So I will see where we are with that.
Okay.
And routers would be the piece of equipment that Shell doesn't have Linksys or anything equivalent to, except for Gigaspire.
Correct. That is the one. Well, that and the power cords.
Yeah.
That I've ordered actually a couple of times because they're being used fast and furious out of the library because the battery supplies continue to fail very regularly. So that and the routers are the only thing that have been re-upped and ordered. But yeah, I can get a report of where does our inventory stand. And yeah.
Further thought about that inventory of equipment. So it's like cables and related equipment that are the main part of that inventory, I would assume. What sort of process do we have, assurance we have that when Shell goes out to make a repair, are they using their parts, or are they using our parts? If they're using our parts, then we shouldn't be billed for it. If they take one of our cables, then we shouldn't be billed for it. But if they take one of theirs, we are. How is that tracked?
Yeah, but well, my understanding is this was one of the big reasons why they said we really don't want to use your inventory and keep a separate one. It is way too hard to which inventory did this come from, and is it billed and not billed? And so in the beginning, I did a lot of back and forth with them about that of where did this come from and why are we being billed for it? And so we have been billed for the equipment for the last year and a half at least. So my understanding was that they just stopped using our inventory. So I'll see where we are with that. And if there's any problem with it and they charged us for using our own stuff, yeah, that's not okay.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, would they be willing to buy us out?
Yeah,
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
And then it just cleans,
Yeah.
the book, clears the
Mhm.
books. They can, take the separate lock off that bin. It just becomes theirs. We assume we're gonna pay for equipment now, and just a thought.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Let me see where we are with what's left. I unfortunately I know they didn't love our pre-connectorized stuff. Do you guys remember this of like we went through all this stuff of getting pre-connectorized
Yeah.
stuff because it was easier to install, and Sheld was like, it's actually not, because the cable management that you have to do for things that are too long takes up the time when you can just the tech can just splice it in and get it exact and move on, instead of like doing all these wraps with it and
Looping it around.
yeah, looping it around. And so they're like, it's a vulnerability point when you have all this like spare cable just hanging out and gets pulled out easy. So they don't do that as a practice, and they do not care about pre-connectorized. So yeah, we'll see if they want it and need it. We could also see if somebody else wants to take it off our hands. If Westfield is using pre-connectorized. It's not doing anybody any good sitting in a warehouse and it's just taking up space. So I'll ask.
Yeah, I think the standard is they just clip off the little connector at the house end at the NID end, because it has to be it's pre-connectorized on the MST end because that's a fancy connector. And I think it's trivial for them to clip off the $5 thing on the end of they clip off the tail and put a connector on, and that was how the installation. That's how the
I gotta run,
installation
guys. I have another Zoom meeting. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for coming,
Good
Craig.
seeing
Good
you.
to see you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So clipping the connector off at the NID end, I think is trivial. So, and I think that's what they do. But so therefore, I think they can use them. That's my my.
All right. Anything else? Okay. All right, great. We'll talk to you all soon.
Very interesting meeting. Thank you.
I know, that was fun.
Yeah, thanks for putting that together, Gail.
Sure thing.
Yeah. Good job. Thank you.
Okay, bye.